Okay, well, I hope you got your thinking caps on. This members form has been irking me the last couple of days, big time. Something simple I just wanted to do, and it proved to be more of a problem than I thought it was ever going to be. Anyway, we've got little controls here on this form. The form itself is like the master, and then these tables around here are all like details for the master. These bits and pieces here are actually part of the master table, which is the members table. And then these are sort of like the children. All right, and then of course these controls are database aware controls. And if you have a look over here in the bottom right, you'll see I've got data controls here, and I've got a whole bunch of grids, navigators, text, edit, memo, blah, blah, blah. But there's no date time type field. Yep. One other point before we move on is that what I do is I put all the data into a data module, and then I have the user interface in the form side of this particular dialogue. So there's two parts, yeah. And I try and keep the data separate from the form, and the data, of course, has quite a bit of code in it. And if I was to go to the main form and started throwing all the data stuff on there, then this main form, which is already huge, would be just full of lines. So that's why I sort of split it up. Always recommend that you split that up. In fact, I have multiple data modules because I compartmentalize each section, so I can have a big application and I can still stay on top of it. Anyway, I digress, because we want to talk about this thing, which is a calendar picker for the date of birth, but it's not database aware. And if we run it and log in, and go there, and if we scrub down here on the navigator and we go forward, you'll see the date of birth changes as we go forward. I have synchronized this non-database aware form control, VCL control, to as it were, staying up to date with where the current record is. Yeah, and you say, oh, that's blindly, that's easy. Yeah, it's easy. Well, I could use the there's a linking feature which allows you to visually link this control to the data, but it works fine. It's very easy. You just drag and there it is. It's done. But I had a few other problems, like going from a child back to the parent. I'd have an exception error and a couple other little niggly pigglies. Also, I found out that the on-change event for this VCL is very much locked to the date variable, which means I can't every time I change the date in code, it'll trigger this event. So it's very easy to get caught up in a loop, an endless loop, where it's writing out to the data module, which is then sending a change, all this sort of stuff. So it had a few problems. So how do I get around it? Now that's the thing. How do I get around it? Without being too long-winded, and let's go here first. So I created an after scroll event. Sorry, I went here. We got to start here. I started here, and when the database scrolls, that is, moves to a new record, it sends off a message to the main form. I like doing it that way because it keeps them separate, you see. I don't want to see form stuff in my data module. I just want data stuff. So it posts the message. So it says, look, I moved on to a new record. And of course, here we are at the actual message procedure where it receives that message and then it does stuff, which is updating that non-aware VCL TCalendarPicker. Yeah, but it does one other little thing. It also flags a variable to say that don't do any on-change events, because as soon as I go in there and I change something, like here I'm setting the date, we get an on-change event, and that's not helpful because I'm going to use that later to go the other way, that is from the form to the data. And then what's the next one? So here is the actual TCalendarPicker on change event, and what it does is it posts a message back to the database, but it'll only do that if this kill switch isn't turned on. Therefore, saving all this looping stuff. Now, the interesting thing here is that it converts the date time to a system time, because the system time is a long int, so it fits in well with the Windows API messaging system. And then it posts a message to a data module. Now, data modules don't receive messages because they don't have a handle, so you have to build a handle for it. So I've got one here. I've got a variable for it. I've even made sure that there's a property so the form can see it, and I've created a Windows procedure to handle that message. And I think, yep, or maybe I should have stayed where I was and just done this. There we go, Windows procedure. And so this is so it gets a message from the form to say that the picker has chosen a new date, and then it does stuff, gets it up to date, handles those messages that come in. So, and that sort of keeps everything separated, and that ended up being the simplest way of dealing with the problem. And I still have a couple of little irky things with the interface, but all in all, it's stable. It's got the least amount of code. It's very easy to read later on when I have to make changes. But yeah, we just go in there and we change the date, and then lo and behold, everything's hunky-dory. The only problem is that it's not, on the navigator, it's not enabling the post edit or cancel edit on this particular VCL, because but there'll be a little bit more code, and that'll be the main form will be in edit mode, and those will appear. So there you go. I hope you found that interesting. It's wasted a lot of my time trying to get the easiest route, which had the least amount of trouble and dealt with all the exceptions. But sometimes it just was very inconvenient the way they designed that actual VCL and how it worked, that it created a few little urgly-purglies. But that's all fixed. It's all running, and I can move on to the other stuff, which I should have done 2 days ago. So that's my lot. Cheers.